Just do my thing, do my thing. Oh, you keep hanging. I'm just do my thing. Oh, you keep hanging.
So I give you solutions, not just here's the problem, but I give you solutions.
I'm just do my 6 in the morning, yeah, I'm on my dough.
And that's why I wrote the book. It took me, it's about 37 to 40 years of research. Welcome, everybody, to Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I am Sharyn Wynters, and this show is about my book, The Pure Cure, A Complete Guide to Freeing Your Life from Dangerous Toxins. I am so blessed and excited and humbled to have in the studio Marianne Williamson. Marianne is one of the most influential women of the modern spiritual movement, and she is an inspiration to millions, and she has had an enormous impact on my life personally. She is internationally acclaimed author, lecturer, and thought leader. 6 of her 10 published books have been New York Times Bestsellers. 4 of these have been #1 on the New York Times Bestsellers. In 1997, she published Healing the Soul of America, calling for a holistic perspective on America's political system. The book is an insightful examination of history and politics, offering personal and political solutions for the renewal of our democracy, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I just want to share some other things that most people don't know about Marianne. For the past 30 years, Marianne has been a formidable activist for social justice. In 1990, she founded Project Angel Food, a Meals on Wheels program that serves homebound people with AIDS in the Los Angeles area. She also co-founded the Peace Alliance, promoting legislation to establish a United States Department of Peace, and she serves on the board of directors of the Results Organization, working to end the worst ravage of hunger and poverty throughout the world. And in November of 2012, Marianne produced a conference in Los Angeles called Sister Giant, Women, Nonviolence, and Birthing, a New American Politics, attended by almost 2,000 women representing all 50 states. I was at that event, and it was the most profound event experience I have ever experienced, and I've been to several events. Her latest book that just came out in the beginning of January is A Year of Miracles. It provides 365 reflections of devotions that offer guidance and spiritual support for following the path of love. They help you to remember each day that you are not alone, that the universe is alive and ready to shower you with help and miracles when you strive to put your best self forward. My God, welcome, Marianne Williamson.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharyn. Thank you for having me.
You've been so busy.
Oh, yeah, well.
And you're about to get busier.
Yes, indeed, yes.
You know, I got to share with you, I just love the way you explain and examine life's big issues.
Thank you.
You really do. You know that I come to hear you speak every Monday night when I can.
Thank you.
In the Course of Miracles. And I sit there and I listen to what you say, and it touches me deeply. And I've done an exercise, a personal exercise for myself. I say, okay, let me just take one thing away. And if I can just take one thing away and get it not intellectually in my head, but in my gut, and live with that.
Right.
That's all I need. It's just one thing.
We heal one aha moment at a time. And I think you're making a lot of sense, because sometimes it is that one thought, that one insight, that one thing later that we describe as having been the brick to our forehead that opened up an entirely new perspective, and that can make all the difference in taking a principle from our head to our gut, making it visceral. So if every time you come on Monday night you get one thing, I feel I'm doing pretty well, yeah.
But now I can't get out of the house after till 4 o'clock because I've got all these little things that I do. Okay, I wake up in the morning, 10 things that I'm grateful for. Who can I be of service? Where can I go? God, who can I? Where can I do? What can I?
Yeah. Where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say, and to whom? Well, you don't really need 10 people.
No, 10 things that I'm grateful for.
I see.
Every morning, 10 things that I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
And then the most profound thing for me, and every time I say it, and I say it several times during the day, God, please enter me where you already abide.
Right.
I mean, just saying that, I get the chills. It's just such a powerful, God, please enter me where you already abide. That is so, so powerful.
Thank you.
You know, I sit there and I hear your concerns of some of the things that you're concerned about with what's going on. And that's why I wrote my book, Pure Cure. I have 20 chapters, 20 areas of concern, from indoor air pollution, what to do about water, what's going on with our food, the toxins that we can't see, the EMFs, the cell phones, what to do when you travel, what's going on in your teeth, vaccines. But I also realize that no matter how devoted we are to health, and no matter how devoted we are to getting rid of toxins, but there are toxins in the forms of thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that sabotage us from living the vibrant life that we can.
Right, there is internal as well as external toxicity. And healing dealing with both is important. It's not an either or.
Right. I have a chapter called Toxic Thoughts and Emotion, and I start out with you, and I want to read it.
Thank you.
Well, before you thank me. Our past is a story existing only in our minds. What do you mean by that?
Well, from a spiritual perspective, the only place where God's time, or eternity, intersects with linear time is in the present moment. And the only thing that is ultimately real is that which is of God. So if God's time is eternity, which means one present moment, and then another present moment, and then another present moment, meaning that the revelation of awareness, the unfolding of awareness, is really not of time and space as we know them. Time and space, as Einstein said, are illusions of consciousness. So God is in the present. The past is your thinking. The future is your thinking. But in the present is the presence of God. And as we dwell deeply in the presence of God in the present, the past, there's a line in the chorus where it says, give me your past so I can change your mind about it for you. And what that means is, in the past, only the love that you gave was real, because only love itself is real. And only the love you received is real. And anything not of love only happened in this shared illusion or hallucination that you had with another person. That illusion is, if you carry that illusion into the present moment, that is toxic. We call it, oh, she's got so much baggage. She's carrying, so she's got so much stuff, right? Whereas someone who knows the only thing that's real about my past is the love given and received. Anything anybody else that did that was loveless, if I forgive them for it, I don't carry the toxicity into this moment. Anything that I did that was loveless, if I atone for it and make amends for it, I don't carry the toxicity into this moment.
That's important.
Then, dwelling fully in the moment, that's where the miracle is. Because the miracle is the natural correction device of the universe itself, which is the handwriting of God, by which anything that wasn't perfect in the past will be made perfect. However, if I don't dwell in the present, in this forgiveness, love, atonement, and so forth, in the presence of love, then I am skipping the only place where miracles happen, dooming by programming the future to be just like the past. So then my ego mind can say, see, nothing ever happened. Nothing ever changes. See, I've told you, nothing ever changes. So that one, give me your past so I can change your mind about it for you, Spirit says. And also, one of the exercises in the course is I place the future in the hands of God. So any obsession and grasping at past or future is toxic on a mental level, and dwelling fully in the present not only isn't toxic, but heals whatever toxins would otherwise be there.
Yeah. How do we stay in the present? How do we get to that place of being present? I know meditation, which is what meditation does, is to keep you in that present moment.
Right.
And the first thing you learn I hear people say, I can't meditate. Well, that's the first thing you learn when you meditate. That's why they call it a practice. You've got to practice being in the moment, clearing your mind.
And let's talk about why that is. When you exercise your physical muscles, you are exercising your physical muscles so that you can move. You can move swiftly. When you exercise your interior muscles, your spiritual muscles, your emotional muscles, your psychological muscles through orientation of prayer, prayerfulness, mindfulness, meditation. You are developing, not as with the physical muscles, the ability to move, you are developing the ability to be still. You develop the musculature that gives you a still mind. And that's why people say, I can't meditate. What they're saying is, I just go hysterical. I experience the assault, the barrage of my monkey mind. And so I'd rather jump out of this moment and avoid the chaos and the internal chaos rather than go into the meditation practice that will transform the chaos. But the first few minutes, yeah, absolutely. It's like when you open, let's say you have some chicken soup and you put it in the refrigerator. And in the morning, you open it up and it's got this whole layer of fat on it. You take the fat off and then there's the soup. Well, the same with the mind. When you say, I can't meditate, what you're saying is, if I sit down in that state, all the stuff's going to bubble up, all the chaos and the craziness. The point is, let it, because it's on its way up in order to move out. That's what the detox is. It's a spiritual detox. So when you say, it just makes me crazy to meditate, what you're saying is my craziness is coming up. But if I sit still, it will make its way up and out, and then I will get to experience the stillness on the other side of that. And then ultimately, because you're doing it on a regular basis, you don't even have that craziness to come up and get out because it's being handled as you go along. Right. Rather than accumulating and then being so awful when you first confront it. Right.
So I understand that, and I understand that our thoughts are the most powerful forces in the universe, and that everything that we send out, we are getting something similar back. So what can we do to make sure that what we're sending out is of the highest and purest contention? How do we...
Well, you were talking before about practice, and the practice in its own way is simple. Am I, when I think of anyone, when I think of my employer, my employee, my friends, those who I don't think of as my friends, people I like, people I don't like, am I sending them love today? And you witness your mind and you go, I'm judging this person, I'm judging that person, I'm judging this group, I'm judging that group. And you realize, once again, you see what a store of toxicity you have. Now, that doesn't mean that when we move past this, we lose the ability to creatively disagree with people. You don't agree with everybody, and sometimes you passionately disagree. But that doesn't have to involve personal toxicity of anger. Right. We can evolve past that. Right. And when we do that, that doesn't make us lose IQ, points. Sometimes people think, well, if I lose my anger, I won't be as smart. Quite the opposite. Love is the most intelligent place to be. Love restores reason, the Course in Miracles says, and not the other way around. The book that you mentioned, my new book, is 365 days worth of little tidbits, daily tidbits. Because when you said, how do you do it? I have never known a serious spiritual path or philosophy that did not concentrate on the morning. It's interesting about mornings because we wake up in the morning and the typical, American or whomever wakes up in the morning, you take a shower, you take a bath, you brush your teeth. Why? Because you don't want to carry yesterday's dirt into the day. But if we wake up in the morning and you rush to the television, you rush to the radio, rush to the newspaper, rush to the computer, then even though you might wash yesterday's dirt off your body, you're taking yesterday's stress into the day. And with all this news media, you're not only taking your own stress, you're taking everybody else's stress all around the world. So it is as important to meditate and purify our consciousness in the morning as it is to purify our bodies.
Yeah, that's really empowering. That's really important. I also have another quote from you that I want to read that says, the only thing you need to recover from is a fractured self. What does that mean?
A fractured sense of self. The world, the thinking of the world tells us that we are not who we actually are. And it tells us that we are who we actually are not. The image that the Course in Miracles uses is, okay, the three of us are sitting here. And the Course in Miracles says, imagine an ocean. You are like a wave in the ocean, thinking you're separate from other waves. Or think of the sun. You are like a sunbeam thinking you are separate from other sunbeams. Because in the realm of the body, in the realm of time and space, you're over there and he's over there and I'm over here. But on the level of mind or spirit, there's actually no space where you stop and he starts. No. Because the mind doesn't stay encased within the body. So actually, if you're a wave in the ocean, you are of the ocean. If you're a sunbeam, you are of the sun. So you and I are taught, you're over here, he's over there, and I'm over here. Now, if a wave in the ocean thinks it's one little tiny ocean, and that's its whole identification, then of course it feels afraid of the rest of the ocean, which could overwhelm it at any moment. But if it identifies itself with the whole ocean, it realizes how powerful it is and how safe it is. So you and I have a fractured sense of self, meaning a mere fractal of who you are, which is your physical identity in this particular lifetime, is who you had been taught to think you are, which breeds fear, because you're just one out of billions of people. You were born and then you die. You've got a space of time. You're on a realm of scarcity. You've got to fight for yours, and if somebody else has it, there's less for you. So enlightenment is a shift in self-identification from the body to the spirit. And then you don't have a fractured sense of self, because you realize I'm more than my body. Right. That which I truly am doesn't stop and then you start. It's one with you. We're all part of this oceanic oneness. And then my mental filter is entirely different, and peace is possible.
That's incredible. So my question to you is, I know you've now come into another part in your life, and you've entered this political race.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I just got the chills from that again, just saying
it's
that.
pretty exciting, isn't it?
It's for me, and maybe I'll share my story a little bit. It's beyond story. You know what? We've got to take a break, so why don't, before we get into that, let's take a short break, and we'll be right back with Marianne Williamson and her new phase and what's going on in her life. We'll be right back.
Officially a candidate for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, California District 33. What we're talking about here is the fact that we have developed a legalized system of corruption in the United States. If only short-term economic gain for the corporate sector is allowed to be our economic bottom line, then there is no room for anyone to get to say, but what about the children? What about the health of the earth? What about the health of the society? What about the health of the air? What about the health of the water? There's no room for conscience. Anytime you have any person or any system which does not operate with remorse, does not operate with conscience, that's called a sociopath. One political party in the United States seems to be just ready to throw us over the cliff sometimes. The other works really hard to keep people from falling over the cliff. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to get in there and say we're getting out of the vicinity of the cliff. I'm running as an independent in this race. Major political parties certainly have a role to play, but remember, abolition didn't come from either major political party. Women's suffrage didn't come from either major political party. I'm a lifelong Democrat. If I were to win, I would caucus with the Democrats, but I got to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, where they are different today does not disturb me as much as where they are way too similar. We, the people of the United States, need to say to both political parties, through a great wave of independent candidacies, not just mine, there needs to be a cry from the heart of the American people that says to both major political parties, hey guys, we'll take it from here. It is not economic values that should order our civilization, it is humanitarian values that should order our civilization. We need to cultivate brotherhood, we need to cultivate justice, and we need to cultivate love. God bless you. Thank you. I love you.
This was the most powerful event and probably the greatest kickoff of a political campaign I've ever seen in my life. She's heard her calling, she's answering it, and I'm behind her 100%.
This event will give me the motivation, in fact, it's giving me the motivation to become a citizen so I can vote and make a difference.
It really is a sign that we're entering a new paradigm of truth and freedom and sustainability. We're making history today.
We're back. I'm Sharyn Wynters, and the show is called Get Healthy the Wynters Way, based on my book, The Pure Cure, Complete Guide to Freeing Your Life from Dangerous Toxins. Marianne, I was at that event, and something happened to me that I haven't experienced in a long time. I think I shared with you that my father was in politics, and I grew up in politics. I remember as a little girl, you know, he was a committee man, and I would go with him. I grew up in Philadelphia, right? Our founding fathers from Philadelphia. And in 1960, my father was a delegate to the Democratic National Convention, nominated Kennedy.
Oh, wow.
And so we as a family drove out to California, and my father wanted to engage me in politics. So all the candidates were sending my father information. There was Symington and Humphrey and Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, Stevenson, Kennedy, and I think there were several others. So my father, you know, we had a basement in Philadelphia. So he said, you know, everything went down the basement. He said, now I want you to look through all this stuff, and I want you to pick your candidate, and so we can have a conversation.
Wow.
Driving 3,000 miles to California. So I looked through all the, and for some reason, I liked Stevenson. So Adlai Stevens, to me, I don't know what it was.
American.
What?
A great American.
A great American. And so then my father told me that he decided he was going to nominate Kennedy. And so we had this great discussion with my, you know, driving to California. And we get to California and we go to the convention, and I'm grabbing all the Stevenson buttons, and I've got Stevenson buttons all over me in there. And my father gets invited with his family to a Kennedy luncheon. And so we're about to walk out, and my mother goes, wait a minute, you can't go to a Kennedy luncheon with the Stevenson buttons all over you. And my father stopped and he said, let Sharyn do that if she wants to do that. I've raised her to be a free thinker, and if she wants to go to a Kennedy luncheon with Stevenson buttons all over her,
wow.
let her do that.
Wow.
So we go to the luncheon.
Uh-huh.
You know, I'm like 11, 12,
right.
12 years old, right? We go to the luncheon, and you know, my father had charisma that went around the corner before he did. You know, all of a sudden, you know, he's over there with Kennedy, and he's got his arm around him, and he brings him over to, you know, I'd like you to meet my wife, and Ida, and my daughter Sharyn. And Kennedy takes my hand. I'll never forget this. And he says, I see you're wearing Stevenson buttons. And I went, yeah. He said, he's a good man, but I'm better.
Wow.
Marianne,
so JFK spoke to you.
Not only that, first of all, off came all the buttons came off, and that was it. You know, I was Kennedy, all that. My father invited him to my Sweet 16. On my Sweet 16, he sent a telegram to my Sweet 16, wishing me a happy Sweet 16.
Were you?
I have that.
So he was president at that time.
Yeah, and
wow.
It's funny because when he died, it was when Kennedy was assassinated. It was the night of my high school prom. And, of course, they canceled it, and we went home. And I walked into my house, and my father was sitting there. And he was crying.
The whole country was.
And I never saw my father cry before.
Right.
And it just, I can't explain what it did, but it was the day we lost our innocence in this country.
Absolutely. No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
And so what I realized is I've like disconnected myself with politics, the love that I had with politics, and here you come, and all of a sudden, I got a glimpse of it at the first event that
Sister
you did,
Giant.
Sister Giant,
Yeah.
and I love the fact that you brought all the different representatives of all the political systems, and there was a little stirring, but you stirred me up the pot, and I went, I love politics. I love what it stood for.
It should be something we all love. It shouldn't be something we all are so contemptuous of. We're contemptuous of it for legitimate reasons, though, because it has become so dominated by such toxic thought forms, as you would say.
A fractured self. Our country is suffering from a fractured self, just like we are. Wouldn't you say?
Well, those of us who are interested in personal transformation know that we have to make a deep inquiry in our own hearts, a brutally self-aware and honest inquiry into who we really are who we say we are, whether we do what we say we do, whether we have our own shadows and defects that we need to atone for, places in our own lives where we need to course correct. And a nation, in order to heal from a time of crisis, which I believe this is, has to go through the same kind of inquiry. Who are we? Are we really the vital democracy that we say we are? Because we're living at a time when, you through something called the National Defense Authorization Act, the U.S. government now has the legal authority to indefinitely detain U.S. citizens. There are people working to limit voting rights. There are so many ways in which the average American is now feeling, for good reason, locked out from access to political influence, access to education, access to economic opportunity, and so forth. So the United States, I think, has to take a real good look at itself and a real deep inquiry into our own shadows, our own defects, because a nation has them just like people do, because a nation is just a collection of individuals. We need to atone for our errors. Even Abraham Lincoln said this. We need to confess our own mistakes, and we need to course correct where necessary. This country has always been born, from the earliest days of our founding. The historical narrative of the United States has been this juxtaposition between enlightened principles and some very, very unenlightened patterns of behavior. I mean, remember, the people who actually bequeathed these profound enlightened principles to us in our founding documents, many of them themselves were slave owners. So the narrative of the United States has always been that there are those who would withdraw the resources of the nation from the effort to more fully embody our own principles and create a quote-unquote more perfect union. And there have been those who did everything that it took to get us back on track of our own enlightenment. We had slavery, yes, but we abolished slavery. Women did not have suffrage, but then the women's suffrage movement gave it to them. And I personally feel, Sharyn, that we're living at a time when the United States has, once again, swerved from its own democratic center. We've swerved from our own ethical center. We've become a nation, a government of a few of the people, by a few of the people, and for a few of the people. Money has so corrupted our system as to create what is now a legalized system of bribery. And money wields power on our government of such disproportionate nature compared to that wielded by the average citizen that we have subconsciously recreated an aristocratic system where the vast material resources of the country over the last few decades, through banking policy, through trade policies, and through tax policies, have been siphoned into the hands of a very few. Right. And in 1776, we repudiated this, and I think we need to repudiate it again. Obviously not through revolution, but through an evolutionary process with real political heft. Otherwise, you will continue to have this income inequality. You will continue to have an inadequate response to climate change. You will continue to have rising rates of child poverty. I don't think the average American even knows that we are second only to Romania in child poverty rate among all advanced nations. We have the highest mass incarceration rate on the planet. Higher than Russia, higher than China, higher than Iraq. And for an African-American man today, has a 1 in 3 lifetime probability of incarceration. This is morally heinous. This is a moral scourge. And you know, Sharyn, for me, if I thought that the political status quo in my district was going to be talking about these things, I wouldn't be running. Right. But I think at this point, it's kind of silly of us to look to the political status quo to seriously correct these issues. They created them. Right. So I think it's time for a new conversation in the United States. It's a conversation that I hear people having. The problem is not the American people. I'm not saying anything everybody I know isn't saying, but we need to say it within serious political candidacies, and that's why I'm so grateful for your support and the support of all those who feel that giving more of an electoral political platform for this conversation is one of the best things we could do with our time.
And it's not just of the few people, by it's become of corporations, by corporations, and for corporations.
Well, you have some individuals, the Koch brothers, for instance, who, because of their vast wealth, are able to wield power over the system way beyond what you and I can do. Citizens United, the Supreme Court decision of 2010, that gave permission to moneyed forces to just on an unlimited, anonymous basis, just flood the campaign seasons in terms of advertising on issues. This could be any form. It could be corporate money. It could be individual money. It could be union money. So it's really just about moneyed forces. But you're right that the dominance of the multinational corporate sector over the affairs of our country has reached a level that actually mocks democracy itself, and I think places our democracy in peril. I think we're in a de-democratization phase.
So you're running as an independent?
Yes.
In the 33rd district?
33rd, California 33rd. I think that there is, there's a duopoly. There's this control of the two major political parties right now that sort of sucks the oxygen out of our public discourse. I think Democrats have great ideas sometimes, Republicans have good ideas sometimes, but they've become like filters that we don't need. You were talking about JFK. JFK said, let us find not the Republican answer or the Democratic answer, but the right answer. I don't think that those answers come from parties. I think they come from our hearts.
Yeah,
and that's where we need to start speaking from and running from and winning from.
You bet. You bet. If somebody, so we need to bring some money in for you.
Absolutely,
okay.
Because it's a grassroots campaign. Okay. Huge corporate PACs are not going to be contributing to my campaign.
You bet. So we all need to please open up your hearts and go to Marianne Williamson for Congress.com. Even $5.
Yes, exactly.
If everybody just gave $5, Marianne. We could get Marianne. We will get Marianne into Congress, and you're talking about a transformational Congress. What is that? What is transformational politics?
Transactional is where I figure out what you want, and I say, okay, Sharyn, I will do this for you if you vote for me. It's transactional. Transformational is where I say, Sharyn, given all that you are and given all that I am, together we could create something beautiful for our country. Let's do that. It sits within you in a different place. Yeah. It makes our relationship collaborative rather than transactional.
Well, it's treating the whole instead of it's less than competition, which is what everything's been based on for so long, and it's time we need to get back. That's what 2013 was all about. It's getting out of the head consciousness and into the heart consciousness. That's what was dying in this world. Everybody's been so up in here. We need to get back to where we were from our gut, from our heart.
Our head cut off from our heart can be a very dangerous thing. And so when you talk about how that's the problem with the country and how something's dying inside us, and now the ocean's dying because of it, the air is dying because of it, the ecosystem is dying because of it. People are dying because of it. I mean, when we behave, and we know this in our own individual lives, when you behave in ways that are loving and harmonious and respectful of life, you create positive consequences for yourself and others. And when you behave in ways that are reckless and irresponsible and unloving, you can cause harm and suffering to yourself and others. And that's what's happened in our country. The collective policies, the collective behavior as expressed through our governmental policies are far too often reckless and irresponsible and create unnecessary suffering for many, many people. And I don't think that the political status quo is going to change that, but a real movement of independent and independent-minded voices among the people of the United States can interrupt this pattern and cause the kind of changes that I think many of us in our hearts must long for.
Right. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with Marianne Williamson. We're back with Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I'm Sharyn Wynters, and this show is about my book, The Pure Cure, A Complete Guide to Freeing Your Life from Dangerous Toxins. 20 chapters, 20 areas of concern, and solutions at the end of each chapter, what you can do to get your power back that in most cases, sometimes we don't even know we lost. My guest is the Honorable.
Not yet.
To me you are. To me you are, Marianne Williamson. And it's time we had a conversation in Washington. What does that conversation look like to you, Marianne?
Well, for one thing, it means that we are more than just economic creatures. And it means a conversation in which it is understood that we live within a moral universe. Not moral as in somebody's doctrine or dogma, but in the sense that we recognize our relatedness to a larger order of things, and to each other and to the earth, and that we have a sacred responsibility to each other and a sacred responsibility to the earth. If you make economics rather than humanitarian values, the organizing principle of your society, then your policies take one direction. But if you place humanitarian values first, then they take another direction. For instance, if only those with economic leverage wield political influence, where does that leave our children? Children don't work, so they have no financial leverage. That's why you don't want to run your country like a business. This country is not a business. We should not anyway, see short-term economic gain as our bottom line. We should see the care and protection of our people, our children, our earth as our economic bottom line, as well as everything else. I mean, if you look at the way we're running things now, it's not like it's produced a vital economy. And that's because it's at odds with the natural order of things. So when we place the love of our children first, for example, what does this have to do with policy? Well, I'll give you an example. Children who do not go to preschool, which usually means the children of people who cannot afford to send their children to preschool, enter kindergarten behind already. Because the kids who did go to preschool have already started to read. They know what those numbers are. They know what those words are. The child who did not go to preschool, who then is not caught up in their reading, by the second grade, if that child cannot read, then statistically he or she is on a 50% probability track to incarceration. And if we do not catch up the child within another 2 years, by the fourth grade, you can see a correlation between those American children, the number that cannot read in the fourth grade, and the number of prison beds we build. So the level of unnecessary human suffering, what we do is we've created a system where, and the American people are good people. We're decent people. I don't think the average American knows what I just said. I don't think the average American realizes the high child poverty rate or realizes the high mass incarceration rate. Not really. And so what too often the system does in America is you keep all the suffering on the other side of town, or you keep all the suffering on the other side of the world so that people won't see it. Because when Americans do see it, we do care. Yeah. And that's why sometimes, whether you're healing your own individual life or you're healing a society, you're going to have to look at the unpleasant things. You can't just pour pink paint over everything and say, everything's good, everything's good. You have to look at the things that need to be healed in order for them to come up for review. Absolutely. And you know how toxic it is. This is what your book is about, how toxic it is, not only for an individual, but for a country, to keep that stuff in there.
Right.
They say in the recovery movement, they say about people, you're as sick as your secrets. Because that's secrets are toxic, and a nation is as sick as its secrets too. I think
that's a powerful thing. How can someone get involved in your campaign? I mean, there's a lot of people out there saying, "Well, I'm not in the 33rd district." I know Calabasas, sure. Malibu, Topanga.
Sure. Well, first of all, any American citizen can contribute to any American political campaign.
So somebody listening in New York or Wisconsin,
absolutely,
you can contribute your $5 or more to Marianne.
MarianneForCongress.com or MarianneWilliamsonForCongress.com. Go there, and you'll see the donate button if that's something that you feel moved to do, and I hope it will. As Sharyn's been saying, even $5, because this is a grassroots campaign. And I believe that if everybody who hears this message and really resonates with it does give $5. And by doing that, you're investing not only your money but your energy. And if you do live in or around District 33 of California, which is as you said, Calabasas, Malibu, Topanga, Agoura Hills, all the way down the coastline from Malibu all the way down to Rancho Palos Verdes and Venice,
Redondo,
and Marina del Rey,
Huntington.
exactly, and into Brentwood, Pacific Palisades, Santa Monica, Beverly Hills. I mean, it's a huge district and it's an exciting place. You know, Sharyn, we live in a part of the country that is kind of world headquarters for new thinking. We start new things here.
Absolutely.
And that's why I thought this district, this is my home. This is not just my home physically. It's my home attitudinally, philosophically. Like we're not bound. The thinking of Californians anywhere, actually, but particularly in this area, is not bound by thinking that went before. We like to start new things.
Well, you've been a trailblazer all along the way. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, because you were one of the great females 20 years ago. Was it 20 years ago when you
30 years ago.
30 years
30 years ago, I started lecturing.
20,
Well, it's a decade
really,
or two, you know?
Really, especially as we're getting up there.
We're just getting better.
Return to Love was 30 years ago.
No, Return to Love was 1992.
1992.
Yeah, but I started lecturing in 1983.
And now it's like you're reinventing.
Well,
people say I reinvent myself all the time, but you're the master.
Well, I do think there's a whole, and I wrote a book about that once actually called Age of Miracles, about how middle age becomes like a second puberty. Yeah. And you really see an age where people make a choice. They make it consciously or unconsciously, whether to just start on this slow track to disintegration or decide to be reborn into this chapter 3 that can be the best of the best. And that's how I'm choosing to play it.
God. If somebody wanted to get involved,
well, we have a
that lives here.
Yes, well,
how can they get involved to support you? Because I know there's a lot of people out there. They're saying, I like what Marianne is saying. Yes, and it's opening up your heart like it opened up my heart. It's something that you said. It's like the sky is always blue. There may be some gray clouds, but the sky is always blue. Once you love something or somebody or something, that love doesn't go away.
Right.
It gets clouded over.
Right.
And that's what happened to me in politics. And you've brought back the love that I felt, and of course the memories of my father,
right.
and his love for politics,
right.
And you know, he loved it so much. And growing up in Philadelphia, he'd take me to Betsy Ross's home, and where they signed the Declaration of Independence and the Liberty Bell. And
well, it should be something that we love. You know, President Eisenhower said politics should be the part-time profession of every American. And I feel for many of us, we've turned away from politics, we've disengaged, we find it corrupt, we find it so lacking in any real higher consciousness, which is true. But at a certain point, where does this leave us to disengage? Because those who are moving the country in the direction we would least want are thrilled that we're disengaged. And I think at a certain point you say, well, how can I complain that politics isn't filled with a higher level of consciousness if we ourselves aren't putting it there? But in order for that to happen, it will take a real sense of movement. And in answer to your question, for those who are in this area, every Thursday night at The Source in Venice, California, at 305 Rose Avenue, every Thursday night at 7:30, we have a meeting for volunteers and for would-be volunteers. So if you are around, if you can come, I hope that you will join, participate in this really amazing journey. Because this journey has something, it's so much more than putting one woman in office. It's so much more than me winning a political campaign. This is about a rising sense of possibility. You know, at a certain point, you can't try to become more awake and more conscious in every area but politics and really call yourself awake or conscious, you know, even like with your book. We can't address just the toxins in the air. We have to also address the toxins in our minds and hearts, and we can't just address the toxicity in one or two areas of our society. I think we have to address it everywhere.
How's the response been?
Very exciting. I'm so grateful to you. This is an example of this program. As I've gone around the district talking and people sending in good wishes, donations from all over the country. And yeah, I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited. It's not an easy thing to do. It's an all-consuming thing to do. And it's a stressful thing to do. Right. But even with all that, there hasn't been a moment when I've regretted the decision.
Yeah. Well, once what is that saying? Once there is hesitancy.
Yeah. That famous quote. Yeah, the magic of having the commitment.
You've made the commitment, and you are.
Yeah, can't go back now.
It's like Gandhi. Gandhi had that card that he was going to burn, and it didn't matter what anything else.
Right.
He was focused on doing it, and we need a different conversation in Washington. Things need to shift, because we're on a Titanic here, and unless we turn the ship around, we're in trouble with our food. Not only just GMO, we've talked about that. I mean, there's some serious stuff going on. Mother Earth is crying here, and it needs to be nurtured again. It needs to be nestled, and you're the lady to do that. And we're going to take a short break and be right back with Marianne Williamson. More to come.
And I mean, it's so sincerely an honor to be here, to be at Ed Bacon's church. The generous words, thank you so much. I do share this passion for not only for spirituality and politics, but for their intersection. I was somewhere once many years ago where someone said, well, we're not going to talk here tonight about religion or politics. And I said, that so leaves me out at dinner. And to be at a church where the understanding already exists, I think that the religious life, I don't have a problem with the word religion. Many people do. I did not grow up in a situation, and obviously you're not in a situation, where religion is a bad word, where dogma or doctrine did anything other than liberate. So when there is this kind of permission to speak about these things in religious terms, to speak about these things in deeply spiritual terms, and also, as Ed was saying, to talk about what the social gospel or the social responsibility is that emerges from the deeply religious impulse. It always seems to me that the church, the clergy, the synagogue, the mosque, whatever, should represent the conscience of a society. And we should hover in a way, and I'm sure that Ed sees it this way as well. Clergy, spiritual teachers, and so forth should hover. We should not be so down into the nitty and the gritty all the time as to get lost in the details, but at the same time, we should never be so far away that we are not telling truth to power and representing the voice of the heart. Often speaking up for love and speaking up for God does mean speaking up for love. And speaking up for God not only means speaking up for love, but speaking up for love specifically for other sentient beings. Speaking up for love not just in some generic sense, but for actual human beings who are suffering in our midst. Sometimes, as we know, that is a radical act. And sometimes that is speaking truth to power in a way that is neither convenient nor easy. And that's why I so admire people like Ed Bacon. Unfortunately, I think the United States is way too full of people who, while they are clergy in some formal or official sense, have been co-opted by the same, if not unethical, then at least ethics neutral capitalist mentality that pervades so much of the society. Maybe there will be less money in the inbox at the end of the day if I say what I really think. So anytime I meet someone like Ed who...
We're back with Marianne Williamson. I'm Sharyn Wynters, and the show is called Get Healthy the Wynters Way. I want to read something from one of my chapters. It's the last chapter, and because it's everything that we're talking about. And my last chapter is a call to action. And the last thing I say is, as a human race, we are at a critical juncture. The decisions our generation makes will determine the fate of the next generations, just as the decisions of the past, mostly made by ignorance, have placed us in this precarious position. The knowledge the previous generations did not have is surfacing, albeit slowly. Now we must get beyond knowing better and be willing to spend the time and resources to make a difference. It is time we rediscovered respect for all life. It is time we relearned to live from our hearts, and it is time we remembered how to live in gratitude rather than in greed that has governed this planet for too many years. I encourage you to live in gratitude, be open to the bounty all around, enjoy the journey, take action, make a difference. And that's what you're all about. You are taking action because it is time. so much stuff is going on. We can't just know about it. Everybody is obligated at this point in time to take action.
Well, I think it's about a balance between a state of being and a state of doing, and everything we do is infused with the consciousness with which we do it. So preparing our state of being is just as important as our commitment to doing, and one or the other. Too much being without action is unbalanced, and too much doing without being is unbalanced. And that's why my book, A Year of Miracles, Daily Devotions and Reflections, gives us the opportunity every day to sort of check in, tweak your attitudinal muscles. Am I in a state of forgiveness? And am I in a state of faith? Am I in a state of love? Am I relaxing into a natural order of things? An embryo becomes a baby without anybody's help, and the bud becomes a blossom without anybody's help, and an acorn becomes an oak tree without anybody's help. It's a natural programming by which these aspects of life are guided to the next best aspect of their lives. And we are programmed for self-actualization. Just like the embryo is programmed to become a baby, we are programmed to become the highest version of ourselves. And if we surrender to the same force of nature that guides the embryo into babyhood and the acorn into an oak tree, then we too will be lifted. And that's not something that we can do just with our intellect. That's why prayer and devotion and mindfulness are important. And if my book, A Year of Miracles, contributes in any way to the journey by which you achieve that, I'm truly honored.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting that. I ordered it and it didn't come in time, so I'm looking forward to it. We have a few minutes left, and what do you feel is one of the most important things when you get to Congress that you want to?
Well, the cornerstone of my campaign is the issue of money, getting the money out of politics. I think that the money in politics and the way it corrupts it now is the cancer underlying the cancers. It is the issue underlying all these other issues. Until we deal with that main issue, until we cut off that money supply, then what will happen? We will always be fighting. We will be fighting for clean air. We will be fighting for pure food. We will be fighting for education. We will be fighting for the things that the average American has the right to feel is a minimal standard of possibility in our lives. So all activity, all the way up to and including a constitutional amendment that will outlaw the undue influence of money on our politics is necessary in order to pave the way for our Congress to be able to legislate public funding of federal campaigns. We would have such a different country if money didn't absolutely the decency of the American people. Martin Luther King once said that the American people are far more compassionate than the U.S. Congress, and I believe that's true. I think the American people are just fine, but the gap between the consciousness of the American people and the behavior of the U.S. government, that's something else entirely. And until we deal with the fact that too many of our politicians, in order to get into office and stay in office, are practically beholden to these multinational corporate interests and other moneyed forces, then we will have what we have. And what we have, Sharyn, I think, is an increasingly unsustainable situation.
Which is one of the reasons why Monsanto has become so powerful.
It is the reason why Monsanto has become so powerful.
Yeah, and that is frightening.
And if the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which the president actually wanted to fast track, if the Trans-Pacific Partnership...
Talk about what that is, because a lot of people aren't familiar with...
Well, I hope that anyone listening will actually go to your computer and Google Trans-Pacific Partnership. It amounts to a multinational corporate coup. It actually overrides U.S. sovereignty. It is a so-called trade deal. A lot of the most nefarious things have been in the guise of trade, and yet at the expense of the American worker or the American citizen. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership would posit and legalize a situation where anything that was in the agreement about what companies could do, the U.S. government actually would be forbidden to pass laws that ran against it. For instance, if in the Trans-Pacific Partnership there's an agreement about GMOs, for instance, then even if the American people did what it took to pass laws that would either label GMOs or even eradicate GMOs, as they have in some places, Monsanto could actually fine the U.S., could actually sanction the U.S. for what it considered its lost profits. the profits it would lose in advance, actually. So, the day we start saying that these corporations get to be more powerful than the U.S. government, which for all intents and purposes, in some ways we already have, then we are de-democratizing. And I don't think that this should occur without a passionate debate about it, at the very least. Now, there are people, Sharyn, I just want to say that there are people in Congress already who are involved in all of these ideas. But we just need more, because numbers rule. And there are
and we definitely need more feminine energy.
And more independent voices, I think. Right. So there are people in Congress already working on the whole idea of a track to a constitutional amendment that would outlaw money. I just would want to use my voice on behalf of that effort in Congress, and then if I have the platform of a Congresswoman, then I can have more, help more to magnify that voice outside Congress as well. Now, some people say, oh, it's so hard to pass a constitutional amendment, which it is. It shouldn't be easy to amend the Constitution of the United States. But where would we be today if the abolitionists had said, it's too hard, or the women's suffragettes had said, it's too hard? I think I said it before, let us not be the first generation of Americans to wimp out on the work that we needed to do.
Well, Americans aren't wimpy.
We're sometimes asleep for too long. We're in a stupor for too long. Right. But boy, once we do wake up, nobody can slam it like us.
Isn't that the truth?
Mm-hmm. So we better get about the work of slamming it.
America, but there are, as you said, there are concerns. I mean, the incarceration. I wasn't aware that's a serious.
Yeah.
Don't we lead the world in
incarceration? Yes, actually more than any other nation. We have 2.4 million people in prison today. During the 1970s, we had only 300,000, and 500,000 of people in U.S. prisons are non-violent drug offenders. So I think facing the complete failure, and it's worse than a failure, there's no even raison d'etre at this point of the war on drugs, is part of the adult, mature conversation that I think the American people need to have.
Incredible. Mm-hmm. We have a few minutes left, and I have, of course, an ending question.
Okay.
In your book, A Return to Love,
okay,
you make the statement that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And I know that you are deeply connected to that concept. If we could acknowledge the truth of that statement, and if we could live from that knowledge that we are powerful creators, how do you see the world being transformed?
Poverty will become a memory. War will become a memory. Unnecessary human suffering will become a memory. And the laughter of children will be so loud around the world that sometimes you'll have a hard time sleeping.
Okay. Well, let's pray.
Let's do.
Let's pray. I'm Sharyn Wynters. You've just listened to Marianne Williamson. Please go to her website, Marianne Williamson for Congress, and open up your heart. Take action. Send $5 if that's all you can do. And let's see this lady, this courageous woman sitting next to me in Congress, so that we can have a new world where our children can be safe and in poverty. Thank you for listening. I want you to share this if you can, and tell your friends. I'm Sharyn Wynters. Thank you. Have a great day. Namaste.
Officially a candidate for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, California District 33. What we're talking about here is the fact that we have developed a legalized system of corruption in the United States. If only short-term economic gain for the corporate sector is allowed to be our economic bottom line, then there is no room for anyone to get to say, but what about the children? What about the health of the earth? What about the health of the society? What about the health of the air? What about the health of the water? There's no room for conscience. Anytime you have any person or any system which does not operate with remorse, does not operate with conscience, that's called a sociopath. One political party in the United States seems to be just ready to throw us over the cliff sometimes. The other works really hard to keep people from falling over the cliff. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to get in there and say we're getting out of the vicinity of the cliff. I'm running as an independent in this race. Major political parties certainly have a role to play, but remember, abolition didn't come from either major political party. Women's suffrage didn't come from either major political party. I'm a lifelong Democrat. If I were to win, I would caucus with the Democrats, but I got to tell you something, ladies and gentlemen, where they are different today does not disturb me as much as where they are way too similar. We, the people of the United States, need to say to both political parties, through a great wave of independent candidacies, not just mine, there needs to be a cry from the heart of the American people that says to both major political parties, hey guys, we'll take it from here. It is not economic values that should order our civilization, it is humanitarian values that should order our civilization. We need to cultivate brotherhood, we need to cultivate justice, and we need to cultivate love. God bless you. Thank you. I love you.
This was the most powerful event and probably the greatest kickoff of a political campaign I've ever seen in my life. She's heard her calling, she's answering it, and I'm behind her 100%.
This event will give me the motivation, in fact, it's giving me the motivation to become a citizen so I can vote and make a difference.
It really is a sign that we're entering a new paradigm of truth